after further review, a Clemson student's perspective on sports.
It's AFR time, baby. Let's get up. Let's get rolling.
That's right.
Personal foul, 69. Offense. He was giving them the business. We played it
Okay, so if Trevor Lawrence isn't either the second or third string quarterback in the fall, I shave my head and you get a tattoo?
You got to get a head tattoo. You got to shave your
get a head tattoo. Now we're talking.
And get a head tattoo.
The personal foul on number 99 of the defense. After he tackled the quarterback, he's giving them business down there. That's a 15-yard penalty.
And now your host, Jay, Bradley, and Evan.
Well, welcome in, everyone. Thanks for spending your Monday evening with us. We are so glad to be back. It's Jay Smith, Bradley Kendall, and Evan McDowell bringing you another edition of After Further Review. Fellas, we had last week off. It was fall break, some much-needed R&R. But college football never sleeps. A lot has happened in the 2 weeks that we have been off the airwaves, Bradley. We got so much to talk about. Dive right into it after further review.
You said R&R. I thought you were talking about Rough and Rowdy, like Old Row. Had to think about that for a minute. But after further review, I think there's right now, I'm going to go 4 teams that I think realistically can give Alabama a game. I think really only one of them can beat them, though. We'll get to some of those. I guess we can start with it right now if you want.
Yeah. I think that's probably the most intriguing because there's been a couple of games that we want to talk about the last couple of weeks. Obviously, Clemson locked up the Atlantic for the fourth straight year. Saturday night against BC. But yeah, headline, I guess, of this show will be Clemson-Bama round 4, ? Because
it's looking likely.
It seems inevitable. And we talked about this on the car ride over. You know, both of these teams are hitting their strides. Now, Alabama, even though they've shut out 2 ranked opponents the last 2 weeks, Bradley, they've had some issues. There are some now glaring issues with Alabama.
Yeah, to start with Tua, the knee injury has been kind of the glaring issue so far this year. That's what everyone's focusing on. What's different, what we said about this year's Bama team is they finally have a functional quarterback. But I think right now what's really different for Alabama is they're focusing way too much on that functional quarterback. I think they're heavily relying way too much on Tua. And you're seeing, like the last 2 weeks, like we said, they've been relying solely on that defense to kind of get them by, having eclipsed 30 points in the last 2 weeks. So that's a question mark going forward. I mean, they got the Citadel next week, which is obviously going to be a win for them. I wouldn't even play Tua if I were Nick Saban. But then Auburn after that, I mean, could give them a tricky game. You got Georgia and then potentially like Michigan. Alabama's looking beatable. They really are at this point.
Yeah, I think even if Alabama drops a game, whether it's against Auburn, which I don't think is going to happen, or in the SEC championship game, look, they're still going to get into the playoff. Both of these teams,
I'm not sure about that,
are getting into the playoff.
Not sure about that. I think right now, if you look at the way it's structured, if Michigan were to win out, Clemson were to win out,
Notre
Dame to win out.
Who are you putting in there instead of Alabama?
If Georgia beats them, I'd put Georgia
in.
in.
You put in 2 SEC teams. And you put in Clemson and Notre Dame, and Michigan would get knocked out.
Why would Michigan get knocked out, though?
Because, as the committee has shown in the past, they are willing to forgive a team not winning their division or conference championship if they're the better team.
True, but
and Alabama was the better team last year.
In years past, what got Alabama in, like we saw last year, was Ohio State losing a game by 31 points. Michigan's only lost this year, 7-point loss on the road to a playoff team.
Yeah. If Ohio State beats Michigan, obviously this conversation completely changes.
Different. If Ohio State beats Michigan, Bama's in the playoff regardless.
For the first time in 3 years of doing this show, are you a proponent of Michigan?
I am.
Is that what I'm hearing?
It's amazing. I'm finally saying this. I'm still not.
But you have them as a playoff team.
I think right now, if I had to match them up against Ohio State and then in that Big Ten championship game, yeah, I'm probably going to go with Michigan. I think this is obviously the best quarterback that Harbaugh's had. Shea Patterson's been better than I thought he was. I'm just going to be honest. He has the 3rd best QBR in college football right now. That's impressive. They've looked dominant the last few weeks. I don't think they've faced a real passing offense yet, so that'll be interesting once they get into the playoff, what they do against the team maybe like Clemson or Alabama. But yeah, right now, Michigan, they're the 4th best team in the country. I don't think it's arguable.
I think, and this is a quote that I wanted to get to, this sheds a lot of insight, and this is from Jimbo Fisher, obviously played both these teams, Alabama and Clemson, this year. He said, and I quote, "They've had success for long periods of time and expect it. Their teams know how to deal with the ups and downs of games, and they continue to make critical plays at critical times." That's what any good organization does. It's not always about talent, end quote. I think this specific quote from Jimbo Fisher applies a little more to Clemson than Alabama, because Clemson initially didn't have the talent pool that they do now. And as we've seen firsthand the last decade, they've had to build their way up.
It's taken a few years. Yeah, and I think that is the most glaring, obvious reason that I think Clemson's the only team that really can beat Alabama or match them head-to-head on a field. The talent level's there. You might say that, Bama's got some advantages here and there, but you match them up on the line and across the board, Clemson can match Alabama in about every facet of the game.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why I think
look at what Steve Adazio, the BC coach, said after the game in his press conference. He said, "This is probably the best football team that I think I've seen in my career." And I've seen a few good teams. Because he was on, I believe, Florida's coaching staff when they played Alabama back in the 2000s.
Seen some good teams. He hasn't faced Alabama, obviously, this year, but I think if he did, right now we're getting to a point where we could say Clemson is better than Alabama in many different ways. I think it's easily arguable.
Well, if you go through, some of again, we've been off air for a couple weeks, so we kind of do a brief summary here. You look at Clemson. They, as we said at the top of the show, they clinched their fourth straight division title on Saturday, largely expected to win their fourth straight ACC championship. They beat Louisville 77-16. That was a footnote. Then they handled BC very well on the road, 27-7, in a cold game for them. But
should have been more.
But they were able to get it done. They have 8 straight 10-win seasons.
That's amazing. You know what's even more amazing? I mean, if you look back at that, 8 straight 10-win seasons is incredible. Notre Dame's had 2 10-win seasons in 25 years. Back-to-back, consecutive 10-win seasons. First time in 25 years that's happened.
I haven't even gotten to the best stat yet. Here's the last nugget I got for you. The Tigers are the first program in ACC history to outscore its opponents by 200 points or more during a 4-game stretch of league games. Clemson has outscored their last 5 opponents 267-43.
Yeah, that average margin of victory is like in the 40s. It's incredible. I mean, is that more of a testament to how bad the ACC is?
That's part of the counterpoint.
Because Clemson we know is dominant, but if you put them like 5-6 years ago, that's not going to happen.
I think you have to take that statistic that I just threw out, and you have to look at both sides. Clemson has been dominant. There's no question. Best team, one of the best teams in the country, talent, all that. However, the competition they've faced is not what would hold up in another conference.
Yeah.
So you kind of, you're like, you're dominating your opponent, but at the same time, if Clemson wasn't dominating these teams, you'd be raising some eyebrows.
I think you would. Yeah, like early on in the season, what we saw, the A&M game, the Syracuse game. I think Dabo's right now decided, hey, we gotta start putting our feet down on these teams and just destroying them, because the committee likes to see that average margin of victory. When you only beat teams by a couple points, people start to raise questions like us. So Dabo's finally on board with it.
Evan, I want to pose this question to you. Do you think that it's fair to use the common opponent of Texas A&M as a way to kind of measure how Clemson and Alabama would fare against each other? Or is that not a fair comparison?
No.
I would say no, because at the point that all of those teams played, it was a different point in the year. So Clemson A&M was week 2, Alabama A&M was week 4, and that A&M team that we played at Kyle Field was different than the A&M team that Bama would have played 2 weeks later in Bryant-Denny. So you can use common opponent as much as you want. I just think there's a low level of validity in that, and if you were going to use common opponent as a valid comparison, then I think it's unquestionable that Alabama's the best team in the country, which I think is true anyway. Mm-hmm. But that speaks against y'all's point just a couple minutes ago that Clemson is the best team in the country. So I'm not a huge fan of it.
I don't think you really have one individual point that you can look at to say, okay, this is why this team's better than the other. I think you just have to look at who each team has played and how you think each team would do against those opponents. How do you think Clemson would do against LSU? Would they score more than 29 points?
Oh, yeah. And that's part of the argument, too.
And is their defense as good as Alabama's? Would they hold them to 0? They'd probably hold them to 7 or 10.
I think LSU would probably score on Clemson. But as I've kind of harped on Clemson this year and in the past, there are times during games where for a quarter or two, they just kind of stagnate. And that's not something you necessarily see as often from a team in Alabama. And that goes into the Alabama part of this discussion where, as we mentioned, they've shut out back-to-back ranked opponents. Both of those teams have been held to less than 200 yards total offense. That's impressive. I don't think, even with how good Clemson's defense is, that would happen. Now, Bradley, you also have to take into account the fact that Clemson's playing second and third string guys.
They are.
Alabama's not necessarily doing that. So that's another piece to this puzzle. Yes, Alabama beat LSU 20-0 at Tiger Stadium. That was the 4th shutout at home for LSU in the last 25 years, and Bama's responsible for all of them. But with Mississippi State, even though they got shut out 24-0, the Bulldog defense played well.
Well, Clemson's defense shut out BC. It was the punt return that was the only scoring, opportunity that they had.
Yep.
You also got to look at the fact that LSU and Mississippi State, I know it's a shutout. I know they're top 25 teams. Both these teams rank in the 80s offensively. That's not impressive at all. Alabama has really not faced a team this year that's exceptionally great on offense. That's just a matter of fact. They've let up 31 points to Arkansas. They've let up 24 points to A&M, 21 points to Tennessee. So they're letting up points. They're just playing teams right now that really just aren't clicking offensively, and they're going to get them in a really good time. I think I wouldn't look too far into that 0 in that second number right there.
Well, Billy texted in 864 wanting to know where the Tide specifically was showing vulnerability. And I think...
Well, the passing game.
You
haven't seen that from the teams they've played. That's the one stat you can look at and say that's a place you can attack Alabama. They rank in the 30s nationally in passing yards allowed per game. The secondary's been suspect. Now, that D-line is going to be great. They're going to stop the run. But in order to beat Alabama, you got to be able to throw the football. And right now, they haven't had a team they've played that's capable of doing that.
Well, you can say their passing defense is ranked in the 30s all you want, but the numbers say that they only allow 15 more passing yards a game than Clemson does.
Yeah.
So there's a very small margin in between whatever Clemson's ranked and whatever 30-something Alabama's ranked. But from a numbers perspective, Alabama's defense is about as good as Clemson's is.
And think of the quarterback play
absolutely, yeah.
and who they're going up against. Again, those are all pieces to the puzzle. I don't... Maybe you're different from myself, Bradley, but I don't want to, get up here and say that there's a consensus number one team, and that team's either Clemson or Alabama. I think right now...
I think Bama's the best team right now.
More so than at the beginning of the season, there's you can actually have a conversation about who the best team in the country is.
Now, after that, there's a drop-off between 2 and 3. Without a doubt.
Like I said, everybody's agreeing on that. That's really not part of this discussion.
I think Clemson's getting closer to Bama. Bama's not getting closer to Clemson. I think that's where we're at right now. Clemson's closing the gap.
Part of that reasoning, I believe, is Trevor Lawrence's very quick maturity in his role as QB number 1.
And Tua's decline. I think those hand in hand kind of go with each other. And if Tua is only at 60% going forward, how does that factor in? Now, he's going to have time to heal.
Tua at 60% is better than 60% of every quarterback ever anyway.
That's why
this discussion is just Clemson, Alabama specific. Don't get me wrong. We're not making an argument for why Notre Dame is going to beat Clemson.
Now, some of these other teams, what are the other teams besides those do you think stand a chance to give Alabama a game? I give you 3 right now. I don't think Georgia's capable of beating Bama. I think across the board, Bama's more talented. I don't think Georgia is consistent enough on offense to keep up. I think the defense been a little suspect all year. The other team, I'd say, Michigan, just because of the defense and how great Shea Patterson's been throughout the last few weeks. And I'll go Washington State.
Yeah.
I think that's one team right now. People look at Oklahoma as that offensive juggernaut. Washington State's right there with them offensively, and they're a heck of a lot better defensively right now.
Yeah, they played really well in the shootout wins they had with Oregon and then Stanford on the road. And even though they're in the Pac-12 and most people are asleep when they're playing, and yes, their sole loss of the season was 3 points to USC on the road, I've been more than impressed.
On a Friday night.
No.
Yeah.
You cannot convince me that Washington State could beat Alabama. Neutral site. I don't care if the game's in Pullman. I don't care if the game's in Pullman and game days there. I don't think they have a chance of even coming within 14 points of Alabama.
He didn't say beat them now.
I didn't say beat them.
It would not be close.
I think it'd be within 14 points.
Alabama, even when they're shutting out opponents, they're not killing. It's not 56-0. It's 29-0, 24-0.
State.
Those are good football teams. That, yes, they didn't score offensively, but they're still limiting Alabama to under 30 points.
When you lose 29-0, I don't care what you limited. If you can't score, you can't win the game.
Washington State's offense is going to put points up on the board. It may not be 35.
Washington State could barely put up points on the board against Cal. And yes, Cal's improving, but Cal is leaps and bounds way behind Alabama. So if you play Cal to a 19-13 game, I don't really care about what your chances against Bama are, because to me, they're not even there.
That's one game.
You got Michigan, Clemson, and Georgia are the only 3 teams that can compete with Bama.
You know who's number 1 right now offensively in the country? Throughout the entire
Gardner
season.
Minshew, because he's throwing against Pac-12 defenses.
Washington State. And you think some of these SEC defenses are
the Big 12 defenses aren't any worse?
Oh, Big 12 defenses are terrible. That's why Oklahoma's the number one offense in the country.
That's why I don't think Oklahoma stands a chance.
No, absolutely
there's not a chance.
No.
I will say that Washington State stands a better chance than Oklahoma ever could. But
I think so.
So you would pick a team like Notre Dame or Georgia or Michigan?
I would take Georgia, Michigan, and Clemson as my 3 teams that could beat Bama right now. I think they're more complete, and I think they're going to keep it closer.
I don't see.
I still don't trust Notre
competing.
Dame. I might trust Notre Dame after this weekend, see how they play against Syracuse and the Bronx. But up until, right now, I think Michigan's a better team than Notre Dame is right now since their week 1 matchup.
Georgia's got the talent, but have they shown it? There's been some suspect games on defense for Georgia, and Jake Fromm's had some bad games. Like, look at that LSU game. We hadn't seen a game like that from Jake Fromm last year. I went through and I had 7 different components that I think, and we can get to these after the break if we want to, or I can do it now.
Well, if you want to talk about having some poor defensive performances like Georgia has, so is Washington State. For crying out loud, they let Oregon State score 30-something points, and Oregon State's won 2 games all year.
Alabama let 31 to Arkansas.
And Alabama's offense is really not known for putting a ton of points up on the board. So even if Washington State's defense is missing for that game, I still think if it's a shootout and it's more than 28 points, it favors...
You're not going to get into a shootout with Bama.
Why not?
Because they're going to score way more points than you are anyway.
They scored 21. They scored 24 points against Mississippi State.
How many points did Mississippi State score? 0. It wasn't a shootout. It wasn't even close. It was 3 touchdowns.
Mississippi State's offense is not
even close.
What Washington State's offense is. That's
no, because Nick Fitzgerald is a terrible quarterback. Gardner Minshew.
That's the argument, is that Mississippi State and LSU... Yes, Joe Burrow and Fitzgerald and all that, but they don't have the pieces that Washington State has.
Evan, how many points do you think Washington State would let Alabama? Right now with Tua at 60%.
With Tua at 60%, let's say neutral field, I think Bama would beat Washington State 42-20.
But they didn't score more than 30 against LSU and Mississippi State. So how are they going to score that many against Washington State?
I think that for starters, let's say Alabama played LSU in Tiger Stadium. That's a completely different atmosphere.
Sure.
And they didn't play a great game. Like, if you watch, it was not a very good game.
They also played Mississippi State at home.
Yeah, and you could say that wasn't a great game either.
And Mississippi State, let's be honest, should have had at least 14 points. If the refs called that game correctly,
shoulda, woulda, coulda.
14 points wouldn't have helped you much anyway.
No,
it would have cut the gap to 2 scores.
I think here. Okay, I know we got a couple more minutes before we gotta go to break, but I think one of the biggest things that I took away from the Mississippi State-Alabama game was the fact that, yes, Alabama scored in their first 2 possessions and scored touchdowns, but after that point, the entire rest of the game, Alabama did not have a single offensive drive longer than 36 yards against Mississippi State's defense. If Clemson's defense shows up to play, or Notre Dame, or Michigan, because Michigan has good defense, or even Washington State, and Alabama's only able to get a couple touchdowns early, it could be a close game in the second half if you're only getting 36-yard drives against Mississippi State at home. At home.
I will concede that Washington State could potentially play them more competitively than Mississippi State did. But I think if by the time the playoffs roll around, you give both of those teams a month to recover, give Tua a month to figure out his knee or whatever is his problem today, I think that Alabama at its best and Washington State at its best is not very close. I think that playoff matchup in the Cotton Bowl would be very similar to the Cotton Bowl Alabama played against Michigan State a couple years ago, where the final score was like 30-something to 0 or whatever. Like, I don't think it would be, like, at both teams at 100%, I don't think it would be that close.
And it's still a stretch to say Washington State would compete in this game.
Yeah,
but I think if you had to pick a game between the teams that are known for being really offensive juggernauts, Washington State, Oklahoma, West Virginia, I'm going to take Washington State out of that group.
Yeah, and that's interesting because obviously we were high on West Virginia at the beginning of the season.
I'm still high on them. I think Will Greer is still a very capable quarterback.
Alabama's just a very formidable foe. Yeah. But, a lot of good discussion. We want to probably talk about some reasons why we would pick Clemson or Alabama in a rematch, and that'll be at the next side of this break. Stick with us.
Impress your guests this holiday season with insanely clean carpets with Zero Res. They clean with powered water, no soap, no residue, no harsh chemicals. Right now, get 3 rooms of carpet cleaned and sanitized for $129 when you mention my name, Mickey Plyler. Don't let your carpets suffer because of the holidays. Book now by calling 558-7300 or visit ZeroResGreenville.com. Zero Res, spell it backwards or forwards, it's the right way to clean, and don't forget to ask about their air duct cleaning special.
I'm Kristen Bennett. The professionals at Bennett Equipment rent and sell Takeuchi compact equipment at 3 upstate locations, Greenville, Spartanburg, and now in Seneca. Takeuchi sets the industry standard for performance and reliability. Bennett also rents, sells, and services many other types of construction equipment with the service you expect and deserve. Call today, 864-277-7272, or visit us at BennettEquipment.net. And remember, if you need to rent it from Bennett.
Score a touchdown with Founders Credit Union. With convenient electronic services like Founders app and mobile deposit, Founders online and online applications, you can spend more time cheering on your Clemson Tigers and less time worrying about your finances. For product information, visit foundersfcu.com. Not a Founders member? Visit relaxjoinfounders.com to see if you qualify for membership. Founders Federal Credit Union is federally insured by NCUA and a proud partner of Clemson Athletics.
You probably drove right by ACD Sports in Easley while traveling 123 to and from home games. The ACD Sports Clemson Fan Shop has relocated to the Hamrick Shopping Center in a larger, beautiful store dedicated to Clemson fans, parents, alumni, and local high schools. ACD Sports offers a unique variety of Clemson items with the best selection of ladies' wear in the area. New items arrive weekly, so check the store regularly. Look for the ACD Sports Clemson Fan Shop signs on 123. Y'all in? Go Tigers! It's Tigers versus Gamecocks during the 34th Annual Blood Bowl on Clemson's campus, sponsored by Alpha Phi Omega. The Blood Connection will be collecting donations this week, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. until 7 p.m. inside Hendricks Student Center and in Bloodmobiles stationed throughout the campus. All donors will receive a long-sleeve T-shirt plus an exclusive Comfort Colors hoodie Tiger tee. Again, that's Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. until 7 p.m. inside Hendricks Student Center on campus. Donate blood, save lives, beat Carolina. Whether you're looking for a rewarding career in healthcare, business, public service, manufacturing, or HVAC, Tri-County Technical College can put you on the pathway to success quickly. With campuses in Pendleton, Anderson, Easley, and Oconee, Tri-County Tech has the school and the location to make learning easier. Check out their website, tctc.edu, and get the answers for enrollment, academics, and so much more. Affordable education with limitless possibilities at Tri-County Technical College.
Are you ready to go all in on a car? Granger Nissan knows what car will fit you and your family because they are a leader in the market with competitive inventory. They have everything for everyone. Granger Nissan is a family business, so they know the importance of taking care of the ones we love on the road. You can drive with confidence and ease because Granger Nissan has all new vehicles with a lifetime powertrain warranty. Granger Nissan is not just in the car business, they're in the people business. Stop by Granger Nissan of Anderson on 3510 Clemson Boulevard.
Brock here with Tom's Barbecue to say we are just as ready as you are for football season. Get game day ready with our full menu at the restaurant, or take some Tom's Barbecue to go to contribute to your tailgate experience. Nothing says game day like great food. Call ahead by Thursday and we will have you all set for the weekend. All you have to do is call 864-288-2652. We look forward to getting your tailgate queued up. Tom's Barbecue at the corner of Woodruff and Garnington in Greenville.
And now, back to After Further Review.
Welcome back. Thanks for spending your Monday evening with us. Jay Smith, Bradley Kendall, Evan McDowell, AFR guys, talking some college football. It's Bama, Clemson, round 4, maybe. That's the subject of tonight's show and what we spent most of the opening segment, Bradley, talking about. But now we want to kind of get into some of the more specific reasons behind why, say, Clemson would beat Alabama in a national championship game this year, or why Alabama would beat Clemson in a national championship game this year.
For starters, what I was kind of looking at was how to beat Alabama, because I think right now Bama would be favored. I think they have every tool in the toolbox to beat a team like Clemson right now. I think it'd be a very, very tight matchup. But right now, I got 7 points that I think, if you look at some of the Bama's weaknesses, or the place that you kind of exploit some of their struggles this year, that you have to be good in to at least contain or hang with Alabama. You got to get behind the line. You got to have a defensive front that can get behind the line of scrimmage.
Check.
So sacks, tackles for loss. Clemson's 3rd in sacks, 2nd in tackles for loss. Bama's 3rd and 9th for comparatively. Yards per play allowed, I think, is one thing that's important, because Bama loves to get big plays down the field, especially with their wide receivers. Clemson right now is 2nd in the country in yards per play allowed. And then I looked at the offensive and defensive efficiencies. You can look at total offense, total defense, whatever you want. You got to be efficient. You can't turn the ball over. Yep. Clemson's second in offensive efficiency and first in defensive efficiency. The other two components I use, QBR, just kind of measuring, do they have a capable quarterback?
They both do.
Trevor Lawrence,
they
yes,
both do.
Obviously to it as well. One other thing I think is really important that I was reading stuff about earlier in the season. CBS interviewed a few coaches and they asked him, what's one thing you think no one's talking about that a team needs that, you could potentially use to beat Alabama down the road? And a lot of them said punting. Which I thought was really interesting because you always look at the offensive defensive sides, but special teams really plays a huge factor.
Field position, exactly, and that's the one thing that Bama's had the distinct advantage of over teams throughout the years with J.K. Scott as their punter. But punting is one stat I think you got to look at, and Clemson's 99th. Not great on the punting front. However, with the name escaped me. The freshman, Potter. BT Potter is booting balls out of the back of the end zone. But that's
recently,
kicking.
But he's a lot better
than what we've
the average kickoff guy. One thing real quick, Evan, I know you were talking about Washington State having no chance. You know where Washington State ranks punting? 7th.
Punting wins championships. You heard it here first.
Your boy Pat McAfee would love to hear that.
All I'm saying is that defense wins championships, but offense gets you to the championships.
So stat-wise, Clemson's right there with Alabama when it comes to that. I thought it was interesting, though, and one thing that I looked at with the sacks and tackles for loss and all that, guess where Georgia ranks? They've had a relatively good defense the last few years. You know where Georgia ranks in sacks and tackles for loss this year? 115th.
Wow.
There's 129 teams in the FBS. That's pretty bad.
And for them to be...
That's pretty bad.
As high as they are, they've only lost a game. That's impressive. They've been able to get away with it. My approach was a little different. So what I want to do here, I'm going to give 3 reasons why Clemson will win, 3 reasons why Bama will win, and I just want Bradley and Evan your agree or disagree with these statements.
Bring it on.
And then we'll just kind of go from there. So first reason...
Disagree.
There you go. I like it. First reason why I have Clemson beating Alabama is their defense. It's experienced, it's explosive, and besides a bit of a thin secondary, there's no glaring weakness.
I would agree with that. Secondary, yes. I think that's one important thing we got to look at.
And
but they're getting better. They're getting better. They're getting better.
Well, when the quarterback doesn't have a ton of time to throw the ball anyway, it really doesn't matter who's in your secondary. You can put me, the Michelin Man, and SpongeBob in your secondary, and as long as Christian Wilkins gets to the quarterback before he throws it, it really doesn't matter. Yeah. So, I agree with that for sure.
Can we get the Michelin Man to block for us? That'd be great.
I like that. He's our fullback now.
Yeah.
Second reason, I got Trevor Lawrence is maturing faster than expected.
Yep.
And will continue to get better.
I think he's leaps and bounds above where we would have projected him early on in the year. He's really developing.
Myself included.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. That's very relieving.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think anybody labeled him as coming in, he was a highly touted recruit who had played on some relatively big stages in Georgia high school football. I don't think anybody was accusing him of being inexperienced.
Jersey on framed in a bar
CSP.
downtown, and he had never played a snap.
And what I think's huge for him has been
Evan's face.
I know. That's how good he was coming in. That's why, at least I'm not all that surprised that he is playing as well as he has been, because we knew he was capable of this. That's why he was here. That's why Kelly Bryant's not here anymore.
So both agreement. With that.
Yeah,
100%.
I think absolutely. Okay. Yeah, the running game's been huge for that, taking a little bit of the load off of him, and the play calling's been great for him.
Last reason I've got here is Tigers are entering what they call, what Dabo calls championship phase. And that's the month of November. They're locked on to Bama, and I think the reason that they're locking on to Bama more this year, I think, than in years past, is because they know that Alabama is the only other team in the country that can give them a real challenge. And if they're able to beat the consensus #1 team right now, it validates not only Trevor Lawrence as a freshman, it validates the whole defensive line coming back, and it validates that Dabo Swinney has built a dynasty. Dare I say it?
Well, especially after getting spanked by him back in January. So
I think this year,
I don't think it's a revenge game for him, though. I don't think they're.
I think to an extent it is.
No, because it's a new quarterback, and it's a, in Dabo's words, it's a new year. But I don't think Trevor Lawrence cares anything about what happened last year. He doesn't care.
Good thing there's 22 other guys who play on both sides of the ball who did play against Bama last year.
It's not quite the revenge tour that Michigan's going through right now, but you best believe they want Bama and they want him bad. It reminds me of Texas back in 2005 when they had USC circled on that schedule the entire season. You saw what happened in that championship game.
Yeah. So both agreeing with that statement.
Yep.
Orange Britches season, baby. Bring it on.
All right, now for Alabama and why they're going to beat the Tigers in this year's national championship.
Tigers.
First reason I got is that Saban's already faced, as Evan pointed out a second ago, a lot of Clemson players. A lot of guys on the roster he has coached and played in games against before, so he knows what to expect. There may be some new wrinkles, there always is, but largely he's going to know what he's going to get from Clemson. Accurate, inaccurate?
I don't really know if he knows what to expect.
He knows it pretty well for a non-conference opponent.
True,
that's not a rival.
We saw even when he did know what was coming with Deshaun Watson, Deshaun was still able to.
That's
I was
saying,
in 2016,
hard to stop.
He knew exactly
what was coming, and he still couldn't stop it. So, and you look at Bama's schedule this year. Is there a quarterback that they've faced this year that's any remotely close to Trevor Lawrence's passing and I guess you could say even rushing ability?
Yeah.
No, maybe Kellen Mond's the best one.
So not necessarily agreeing with that?
Not 100%, but I'll give you a little bit of that.
Okay, all right.
I will disagree with this as well. Maybe a little bit more strongly than you did, Bradley, just because, like we just said, played him in the national championship, beat him one time, played him in the national championship the next year, quote-unquote, knew what to expect and lost.
And you could say that Clemson knows what to expect, too.
Yeah, exactly.
They know what's coming from Alabama, and you give Brent Venables a month to prepare.
But then again, you don't know what to expect because let's say Clemson and Alabama plays here in 2 months. Neither of them have faced each other's starting quarterback before. It's not like we're playing Jalen Hurts against Kelly Bryant again.
Yep.
We've got two guys who can actually throw footballs now.
And it is crazy. Yeah, exactly. You've seen two similar quarterbacks each time they've played.
Explosive playmakers.
Exactly, yeah.
Next up, this may be a little controversial. Maybe more so than the first one, but the first one proved a little controversial. I say that Tua has a better O-line to protect him than Clemson's O-line.
But Clemson's got a better D-line to attack that O-line.
No. This is about the O-line. Is Alabama's offensive line going to give Tua more protection than Clemson's offensive line will give Lawrence? Take the defense out of the equation.
I would say yes, only because Tua's ability to escape is a little bit better than Trevor Lawrence's. Now that he's injured.
If he's 100%.
If he's injured, that's different. Yeah, I think if you matched up the O-line specifically, and you had them do like a little tug of war on a rope, I'd go with the Alabama O-line.
Last year at the Sugar Bowl, watching Clemson's O-line, I mean, it wasn't fun.
I'm not favoring anybody's O-line against our Power Rangers right now. So
that's the thing. I think that neutralizes that advantage.
I would say,
but they're not all four going to be in every snap. They're going to,
guess who's going to be behind him?
Okay, we'll just bring in Xavier Thomas real quick.
Listen, with the depth at defensive line, no one's going to question. It's just a matter of they're not going to be after the quarterback every single play.
I think they could be, though. Mississippi State put some pressure on him this past weekend, got a couple knocks on him, and obviously he's still not 100%. So you figure if Mississippi State's
a top 10 defense.
They've got a good D-line. Clemson's got a better D-line. So you figure with the amount of pressure that LSU and Mississippi State just got on him in the past couple of weeks, I think Clemson could get more pressure than that. And I think significantly our D-line is better than their
offensive line. And you did say we
line.
haven't seen the quarterbacks in the past, but these D-line have seen the offensive linemen from Alabama. So, I mean, they've faced these guys before. They're not afraid of an SEC offensive line. They can handle that.
Again, these are reasons why I think Alabama will win. Not necessarily
if they win, this will be why.
Exactly.
Yes.
I'm not advocating these as my opinions. These are just, I'm thinking this is what will help them.
Now,
get the
you
job
also
done.
said if Florida's defense doesn't do well, South Carolina's going to destroy them, and we saw what happened with that. But
honestly, I can't, because really watching that game, I was just baffled at how easily South Carolina threw that game away. It was shocking.
I wasn't baffled how bad Felipe Franks played. That was not shocking at all.
Ooh, I really liked it. And again, we'll get to this later. I like when he shushed the crowd that booed him earlier. But anyway, last reason that I think Alabama will beat Clemson is that Bama's defense is going to hold back the Clemson rushing attack. The depth that we have at the running back position won't matter because their defensive line is going to hold that back. We're going to become one-dimensional. We're going to rely on Trevor Lawrence to throw the ball. He may get uncomfortable. He may make a couple of mistakes. I'm not saying it will happen. I'm saying that's what Bama needs.
They do. I don't think that's 100% going to happen, though. I think Clemson's ability to be balanced passing and rushing-wise is way far beyond any of the teams that Bama's faced so far. Like, you could look at Mississippi State and LSU and say,
defense in Alabama.
Mississippi State and LSU, they're strictly running teams. I mean, even Nick Fitzgerald's kind of a third running back. And Bama hasn't really faced a team like that. They can attack them on both sides of the ball like that. So I think, the rushing attack might be a little bit limited. Travis Etienne might not get 300 yards.
Etienne, the reason I bring up this point, the specific reason, Evan, is because in a couple games this year against really run-of-the-mill opponents, Etienne was not having stellar stellar games. I believe it was NC State and I want to say the Syracuse game.
He didn't maybe Wake Forest.
Pretty well in the Syracuse.
Was
game.
it Wake Forest that we ran really well and didn't throw the ball a whole lot? Is that the one that we had 300-yard rushers?
2 games where Etienne had well under 100 yards, and they were opponents that we really should have been able to run the ball at will against.
It was Syracuse. He had 39 yards, but 3 touchdowns.
Well, so there you go. But still, he was not. It was all this Heisman talk, and then he had those 2 games, and it kind of went away.
You know what's one thing that's been interesting recently, especially this past game, special teams. Amari Rodgers has really developed himself as a punt returner.
Yes.
And that's one thing that
and being able
Bama's
to field the punts.
That's one thing that, like, Kenyon Drake a couple years ago used to beat Clemson. I mean, you could look at that now as kind of an asset for Clemson, having to be able to field the punts and not only do that, but take it back.
I would say if this game comes down to special teams, Clemson's in trouble because I don't trust our special teams. I don't trust Amari Rodgers as a punt returner. I think we saw that. I think we saw that against Boston College.
Who would you rather have back there?
What do you mean you don't trust him against Boston College?
I'm not saying there's somebody I would.
He took a punt back.
Yeah, but he also caused a fumble and a turnover.
Well, that was because the BC guy ran him over.
I don't care. Get out of the way.
I mean, come on.
It's a maturity thing.
That should have been a call.
That should have been a call.
That should have been a call.
Well, yeah, and it should have, and that's beside the
point. It didn't
point.
affect the outcome of the game, but
Amari Rodgers as a punt returner is definitely more boom or bust, whereas I know Hunter Renfrow is going to catch the ball every time. He's not going to return it. He's going to fair catch it every time, but he's not going to muff it, fumble it, make some kind of mental mistake.
To beat Bama, you want to be conservative, or do you want to try for that boomer bust?
I want to hold on to the ball, and I want to give my offense a chance. So I'm going to let Hunter Renfrow field that punt.
If you muff a punt against Alabama, that's the thing.
Turnovers against Bama, you're done.
That's a touchdown.
You're done.
If you put
Just
it
go
in
home.
if they're on our side of the 50, if they're on our side of the 50, we're in trouble. All of a sudden, your margin of error just reduced
I think that's where the punting game is really going to come back to get us a little bit. Is we're going to have to try to flip the field a few times, and that's
that's what I'm saying. If it does come down to special teams, we're in trouble. Whether we're kicking or receiving, I don't really trust our special teams against Bama. You can't afford to shoot yourself in the foot. Nick Saban's going to reload that gun and hand it right back to you.
Yeah. Now, Bama doesn't quite have the punting they have in the years past, where they could, turn the ball over from 120 to the other.
But if you're muffing the punt, it doesn't matter.
True. So I think Clemson's done better this year, turnover-wise.
So to go back to your original point,
Yes.
Jay, I will say that you are half right in that Alabama could effectively limit our running game, but as has happened against the other teams, which I know are not as good as Bama, it might not matter because we've seen that Trevor is capable of stepping up and making the throws when he needs to, especially when the running game is struggling. So, Alabama could definitely limit us offensively. I'm just not really sure how much that would really throw us off.
I think, again, like I said, to wrap up the discussion, it's not as much this is what I think will happen. This is what I think has to happen for Bama. These are things that Bama needs to check the box for if they want to win the game. And then going back to Clemson, the defense, Trevor Lawrence, championship phase, the mentality, all that needs to be clicking for the Tigers if they want to have a chance at knocking off Alabama, because nobody is questioning these are the best 2 teams in college football.
Right now, though, I think it's a 3-7 point game. I think it's real close, 3 to 7 points. I think would be the margin.
And I think this was discussed during the break, if I'm not mistaken, but I believe the game would be in the mid-20s, like 27, 24, 24, 21. Y'all are going more in the 30s.
Yeah, I think 30s. I think even you saw in the championship game a couple years ago, 2 very, very good defenses, but 2 very capable offenses. Game was in the 30s. So, I mean, I think it's very possible we hit 35-31 again.
I agree with that because the last 3 times we played them, we've been in the 30s, the 40s, and then in a game we didn't play so well, Alabama still hung 20 on us. So I think if both teams somehow end up in the 20s, somebody has gotten hurt and something has gone horrifically wrong for that game to be limited to the mid-20s.
Well, I think consensus here is we still obviously have several games to be played into the regular season, conference championships, and then the semifinal games. You have to win those in order to advance to the championship. But right now, all 3 of us in this room and most everybody else out there in the country is picking these 2 teams to square off in the national championship
I think
game.
if you took Clemson Notre Dame right now, Clemson's winning that by at least 14 to 20 points, and then you put Alabama versus Michigan.
That could be your game that ends up in the mid-20s right there.
It could.
Because Michigan's defense has got to go to, and their offense isn't quite as explosive as Clemson. So if you're looking for a game that ends up in the mid to low 20s, I think that's the one you're looking for.
Chance for Shea Patterson to redeem himself because he did not play well against Bama the last time he faced them.
What I've seen from Alabama's offense the last couple of weeks here against ranked opponents, I know they shut them out, but still some questions. But got to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll highlight some of our favorite games from the last 2 weeks. That's next. Stick with us.
Bring your own tools, pull the parts you need, and save big. At LKQ Pick Your Part, you'll find millions of parts from hundreds of cars and trucks to choose from. Right now, download our PYP Garage app. Get instant notifications when your vehicle comes to an LKQ Pick Your Part near you. Sign up for our PYP Garage and start earning points towards discounts on future purchases at LKQ Pick Your Part. It's easy and free to sign up. Visit LKQPickYourPart.com for more information or visit us today and save big. What's in your garage?
If you have problems with the IRS, don't trust your personal information to a stranger on the other end of a 1-800 number. The Green Law Firm is local and looking out for you. For a free strategy session, call 271-7940.
Does your South Carolina driver's license or ID have a gold star? If not, make the switch to a Real ID today. You may be eligible to purchase your Real ID online at scdmvonline.com or visit the SCDMV with all required documents to purchase your Real ID before the lines grow. The deadline will be here before you know it, so make sure your ID is a Real ID to board a plane, enter a federal building, or visit a military installation today. More information at scdmvonline.com.
Homeowners and landscapers choose Enviromulch, a locally owned, environmentally friendly company. They supply quality organic mulches, soil, sand, and stone for every landscaping application, delivery, or pickup. Nobody beats their prices. Enviromulchonline.com.
The Surgery Center at Pelham is a fresh approach to the outpatient surgery experience. First of all, we're a smaller facility, so we really are a true team where we make decisions together as a team to care for our patients the absolute best way possible. We are the ones that are successfully performing the total knee and hip replacements as outpatient surgery here in the upstate. At the Surgery Center at Pelham, our team of medical professionals are with you every step of the way, from the time you enter our doors that morning to the time you walk out of our facility that afternoon. I'm Kathy Witham, one of the clinical directors at the Surgery Center at Pelham, and I want to personally invite you to come see us and take a tour of our surgery center. Meet our wonderful staff and allow us to answer any questions you might have about total knee or total hip replacement surgery. We're just different from everybody else. You'll be impressed. The Surgery Center at Pelham, where we're doing amazing things to improve your surgical experience.
Make your next corporate party or team building event one to remember with Local Q, featuring a wide-ranging menu of mouth-watering, in-house smoked barbecue, signature craft cocktails, 25 rotating drafts, and hundreds of classic games to play. Local Q is the place to break the ice with coworkers, friends, and family. We'll craft you the perfect menu featuring all the Local Q favorites, whether for 50 people or 250. Local Q has the room for you. Reserve your venue today by visiting localq.com.
Electric City Signs and Neon. Over 50 years of sign design, fabrication, installation, and maintenance in the upstate. Specializing in neon, plastic, flex face, channel letter, and LED message signs, Electric City Signs is ready to serve you with the highest level of satisfaction. Have questions? No problem. Their experienced team will see your project through inception to installation. Professional sign services at the best price. It's got to be Electric City Signs and Neon. Visit electricitysigns.com or call 225-5351 today. Go Tigers!
Has your extra bedroom turned into a junk room? Is your garage packed and cluttered? Specializing in junk removal and cleanouts, Absolute Waste Management is there to help. They handle the tough stuff like lifting, loading, and dumping. All you have to do is make the call. They do the rest. Call or text 864-266-7131 for a free estimate today. Make the call, schedule an appointment, and say bye to the junk. It's that easy. 864-266-7131.
And now, back to Jay, Bradley, and Evan.
Welcome back. One final segment for you on this dreary Monday evening.
Welcome to Seattle.
It is
200
raining
days out of the year.
and cold. And it was hard to go to class today, man. A lot of people walking around campus did not look happy.
It's hard to go to class. Yeah.
You didn't have class today, did you?
I had one class.
One
today,
class.
actually. 30 minutes.
That must be nice.
Wonderful.
That must be nice.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what we're going to do here, Evan's got his timer queued up. We've got 3-4 games. We'll see how much time we have that we wanted to touch on that happened the last 2 weeks while we were on break. We'll have 2 minutes to talk about each game. Evan, are you ready?
Time starts now.
Bring it on.
First game, West Virginia, Texas. West Virginia won this one 42-41. Bradley, what are your takeaways?
This was honestly my favorite game to watch this season. I love Dana Holgorsen. I love Will Grier. And to see them go for 2 and kind of a make or break moment for not only them, but the Big 12 in general, this was huge. And you saw it happen this week. It kind of carried over because Oklahoma State went for 2 to try to knock off Oklahoma. So that, taking their idea right there obviously didn't work out as well for the Cowboys. But I think this puts West Virginia, it legitimizes them because this is the team that Oklahoma lost to. West Virginia beats them on the road.
They went for 2, then they realized that Texas called a timeout, so it negated the play.
And they went for 2 again
Had to
and
go
got
for 2
it.
again and got it.
Bold move to have the same exact play called, but have Will Grier roll out.
Yeah.
That was great.
Very gutsy. But, a great game overall. It's amazing to me that West Virginia did not score at all in the third quarter.
After putting up 42 points total, right?
After getting 42 total. And this game didn't go into overtime.
And I think right now this puts West Virginia above Oklahoma. This gives you the reason to slide them up in the rankings above the Sooners right now. Because, West Virginia, their only loss on the year on the road to Iowa State, who's in the top 25. Oklahoma struggling, lost to Texas.
One thing about this game, West Virginia had 14 penalties. 8 in the first quarter. So got some things to clean up.
They do.
Some things to clean up.
They still got a long way to go if they're going to contend with Oklahoma for back-to-back weeks. So
apparently
we'll
a couple of those flags were the horns down. Or it was like the gesture they called unsportsmanlike conduct. Guess because that's against Texas.
I always love that. It's like putting the U down. You just got to do it.
Yeah,
you got to do it.
I don't know, but Evan, we're going to go ahead and move on. I don't know how much time we had left.
You still got a solid 23 seconds over here.
Oh, okay.
Wow. Minute and a half. Well
Next game, Wake Forest and NC State. This one occurred this past week. Demon Deacons with a surprise upset over the Wolfpack. Wolfpack are not going to be ranked after this one.
Not at all. I mean, committee might still find a way to put them up there. I'm surprised they were even 14th to begin this. But, NC State, a defense that we'd seen kind of all year be relatively good, the rushing and the passing end. Letting up 138 rushing yards and, 300 yards through the air. And Wake's got like a third-string quarterback in. That's even more amazing. They had like a third-string quarterback, a backup running back, and like 3 backup linemen. And State was still not able to win
they
this game
haven't
at home.
beaten a ranked opponent since they were on their home field since they beat number 24 Florida State. That was in 2008, and they've only won in Raleigh once out of the last 16 attempts.
Belk Bowl has got Wake Forest's name all over it now. I think they're going to get to 6 wins. Amazingly enough, as bad as Wake Forest has been this year, still able to claw their way to 6 and 6.
Third straight bowl berth. That's not bad.
Yeah, Dave Clawson doing some good
stuff. They look a lot better than when they were getting routed by Notre Dame and Clemson at the beginning of the season.
They've improved immensely, no doubt about it. They got coming up, we got Pittsburgh and at Duke. So 2 very crucial games in the Coastal that could impact the landscape of that going forward.
All right, next game that we're going to highlight, let's switch over to the Big 12. We highlighted this a couple minutes ago, rather. Oklahoma State, Oklahoma. This one was bedlam, 48-47 in favor of the Sooners.
I was very surprised that Oklahoma won this game. I really was. I thought Oklahoma State had in the bag going for 2 there. I was expecting it to be exactly like that West Virginia final. And honestly, I think this puts a little more question marks on Oklahoma. And, we'd seen their defense improve after they switched defensive coordinators, but letting up 47 points to Oklahoma State, that's glaring. That's not good going forward, especially when you got to face a team like West Virginia in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I want to say, and I'm not exactly sure, but I want to say that Oklahoma gave up 700 yards on defense, or was it Oklahoma?
Does it matter?
Yeah, honestly, I know that Oklahoma State.
Oklahoma
640.
Oklahoma had 702 yards of total offense, and OK State, like you said, 640.
Cornelius had 501 passes.
I was about to say 500 yards and 3 touchdowns. You hate to ask him to do anything more, but if he could just make that throw on that last 2-point conversion, you'd be looking at 49-48.
And what was very surprising, we've seen in the past Oklahoma being a very strictly an offensive team or passing team, I should say, 353 rushing yards.
Wow.
That's probably
39 first downs. You want to keep throwing out some insane offensive numbers here?
Yeah. I mean,
crazy.
It's Big 12. It's
the Big 12. Big 12.
Big 12.
And honestly, West Virginia might put up 60 on them at this point.
Yeah. Okay. So it was, and I don't know if you said this earlier, but it was Oklahoma State's defense. They gave up 702 yards. And the fact that they've allowed 30 points in 5 straight games. No wonder they're 5-5.
Yeah. Oklahoma State, a team that we thought after that Boise State win could potentially
2-5 in conference play. That's bad.
Supposed to have one of the best defenses in that conference, and no, they just don't have enough offense, amazingly enough, to keep up with letting up 48 points.
Last game, switching back to the SEC. This one was a bit of a head scratcher. Maybe some people saw this coming, but the 4-5 Tennessee Volunteers whipped the Kentucky Wildcats 24-7. Kentucky was ranked 11th at the time of this game. Polls come out tomorrow. I imagine they'll be out of the top 20.
You want to know one way for people to forget about beating Florida for the first time in 31 years? How about losing to Tennessee? That's embarrassing. Come on, you put up 7 points. I know Kentucky, you're struggling on offense, but 7 points against Tennessee? Unacceptable. I mean, this is a team that was going to win the SEC East 2 weeks ago. How does that happen? This is a testament to how messed up the SEC has been this year, man.
They dropped out of the division race last week with their loss, but this was just insult to injury.
Even more surprising, how did Arkansas almost beat LSU? I mean, LSU, I know they didn't score against Bama, but Arkansas is awful.
Yeah.
Can we just give a shout out to Jeremy Pruitt right now? He's got the Volunteers on the cusp of bowl eligibility when many people preseason thought they might not win a game all year.
You're looking at
they
two of
didn't
them
win a
right
single
now.
conference game all year last year, and they are, like you said, Evan, about to get to the bowl eligibility stage.
2-4 in the SEC.
I did think one interesting nugget. We wrap up this discussion. Apparently, there was I didn't see this, but there was a skirmish in the end zone after a touchdown that resulted in an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty for every player on both teams. Did y'all see this?
No, I didn't.
So this is the second straight year that a Tennessee-Kentucky game has included an incident that resulted in penalties for every player on the field.
That's great. That's one of those awesome calls where you hear like offsides, everyone but the center, or false start, everyone but the center. That's awesome.
I thought that was bizarre. I mean, it must be a pretty sizable skirmish for everyone to have been involved and gotten flagged.
Does Tennessee get 7-5? They got Missouri at home and then at Vandy.
I think they split.
They split it.
Which still makes a bowl and still is looking better than Florida State is right now.
They're going to beat Missouri, and then they're going to trip up against Vandy.
I think Vandy's... I think they're going to beat Vandy.
Probably does not. Oh,
wow.
Out of time.
That was like my original alarm I had when I first started using the iPhone, and that's how I woke up. So like I was still jumping to that right
A little
there.
PTSD for you there. Sorry about that. You are not late for class.
We got a handful of minutes left. Let's dive into our updated top 6 for Bradley, top 8 college football playoff rankings. Evan, do you want to start? Do you want me to start?
Whoever wants to go first. Bradley seems most eager, and he's got the most teams to talk about anyway. You go ahead.
Number 1, Bama. That's pretty obvious, I think, at this point. 2, Clemson, not far behind them. 3, I got to give it to Notre Dame. I still think Michigan's probably the better team, but Notre Dame did beat Michigan, so you got to give them the benefit of the doubt there. Michigan at 4. 5, I think Georgia's well deserving of that ranking right now. 6, I want to put Washington State. I think right now, like I said before, they've separated themselves from those offensive juggernaut teams as the best team in that group. 7, I'll go West Virginia after that, and then 8, Oklahoma, and then right behind them, UCF at 9. Still disappointed.
Oh, my God.
Disappointed the Knights couldn't...
you could hear the eye roll. If only you could hear the eye roll.
I thought this would be the year. Really did, but it's not looking likely.
Temple says hello, by the way.
So does 2-7 Navy.
All right, Evan, who you got in your top 6?
I'll go Bama 1, Clemson 2. I've already said that they're playing better at this point in the year, so give me Michigan 3, Notre Dame 4. I'll go Georgia 5, and only because I have to, I'll put Oklahoma 6, but I'm not happy about it.
Come on.
I think head-to-head they beat West Virginia. I think the two of them probably end up splitting, and the Big 12, again, doesn't make the playoff, which is right because they shouldn't because they can't play defense. But there's just no one else good to put at that 6 spot. I think they would probably outscore Washington State. I think Kyler Murray's a little more dynamic than Gardner Minshew is. But I want Washington State to be higher. I just can't put them there just yet because I'm not 100% all in.
Funny you speak of Washington State because my top 6, I got Bama at 1, obviously, Clemson at 2. With Bama's performance the last couple weeks, hard not to put them back at 1.
It's amazing even
I was
below 1.
I was about to say, I'm the only one that had Clemson at 1 throughout the season, and I've been taking the most crap.
And you were the only one that had them
Clemson.
At 8 in the first couple weeks of the year.
I know. Notre Dame, I got at 3 still. Michigan at 4. Georgia, I'm going to put at 5. And then Washington State, I have it 6.
Can I just point out that as much as y'all like to say the AP poll is stupid, your top 5 is exactly the same as the AP poll top 5.
Well, I just think it's really not arguable for the top 5 teams.
Yeah, I mean,
right
realistically,
it's not.
It's 1 and 2, and whether or not it's the AP poll or even the college football playoff poll that's going to be updated tomorrow night, you know they're going to have that as their top 5.
Yeah, that's
maybe switch Notre Dame and Michigan.
That's the only thing that could change.
That's it.
Yeah, you would think that it wouldn't the top 4 at least wouldn't change, and if so, you do bump Michigan right above Notre Dame just because they're playing better right now.
Please tell me LSU's out of the top 10 after this week. I mean, please. And Florida, too. Get Florida out of the top 15. That's ridiculous that they were even that high to begin with. Get them out.
Is that SEC bias?
Yeah.
That's stupid.
So
it just means more.
Do we agree that as of right now, it's looking like ACC champ, SEC champ, independent, and then maybe either the Big Ten champ in Michigan or a second SEC team in Georgia? Pac-12 and Big 12 are they're done.
Pac-12 is out. Big 12 is out. If Notre Dame loses this week, I think the SEC is
I think the Pac-12 might sneak back in.
I was about to say, if Notre Dame loses
Pac-12?
and Washington State wins out, I think they get in over.
Yeah.
Well, and it depends on how the SEC championship plays out, too. Because if Georgia loses, obviously they're out. Bama's undefeated and they're in. If Georgia wins, that's when things can get a little sticky because then you've got one loss SEC champ Georgia, one loss non-SEC champ Alabama, who, unlike last year, did win the SEC West. So they have their division title over this time last year when they had nothing, or well, after they lost the Iron Bowl. But either way, I think the easiest thing to happen would be Bama wins, Clemson wins, Michigan wins the Big Ten and beats Ohio State, and then Washington State wins the Pac-12, and Notre Dame loses this week, and then the decisions are just easy and unquestionable.
Now, what if Oklahoma runs the table?
No.
Do they get in over Washington State?
Oklahoma's got to beat West Virginia
Neither
twice.
of those teams
That
will get
ain't
in.
Well, who's Washington State's best
Neither
win?
of those teams
I mean,
will
I know
get in.
I've been on their. I've been riding their bandwagon.
Oregon, they'll beat Washington in the Apple Cup in 2 weeks. USC. UCF is not getting in the playoff, Bradley.
Hey,
get it through your thick
We
skull.
got a couple seconds left. I did want to take the last little bit of the show. Got to give a shout out. Youngest brother, Cole Smith, is turning 15 today, and I wanted to wish him a happy birthday. Happy birthday to Cole. I
That's
know
from me,
he's
Cole.
listening. I'll be giving him a phone call shortly after we go off air. Happy birthday, bud. Love you.
You said 15?
15 years old.
He's older than you, man.
God, he's about to go take his driver's test. It's scaring me.
Amazing, man. Happy birthday, Cole.
Yeah. That's it. We're out of time. Always fun bringing another edition of AFR. For Bradley, Evan, and myself, we'll see you next time.